Assalamualaikum and good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the first series of webinar on the BEM professional competency examination. If you are having your lunch right now, I hope you enjoy your lunch. And thank you for finding time and visiting today's webinar. My name is Shazwani from Megajati Academy. Will be the moderator for today's session. Today we are presenting Board of Engineer BEM Professional Competency Examination PCE presented by Engineer Hamizuddin Abdul Rahman. Hizamuddin Abdul Rahman. Wow. Just a little housekeeping before we get started. Please mute your microphone during the presentation. And if you have any question during the presentation, please type them into the chat box and speaker will read them during the Q&A session. We will have a short break during a presentation. We will send you all the relevant email after the event, including a link to download today's slide presentation. Okay, now we can begin. Our today's speaker is Engineer Hizamuddin Abdul Rahman. He's a professional engineer PEPC since 1998. He is certified registered for project manager RPM level 5 and a certified assessor for competency-based role-play assessment. He obtained his Master of Project Management from BEM and his bachelor degree in electrical engineering from the same university. His previous position before retire was the Director of Pasukan Project Khas Bekalan Elektrik Sabah at Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources. He has experience in electrical engineering, system design, site supervision, and maintenance project management. Without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome Engineer Hizamuddin Abdul Rahman to lead the presentation. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. And firstly, thank you the moderators. And then for today's topic, that is about the professional competency examinations. That is what the topic that has been given to us to talk about. Okay, firstly, before I proceed with this presentation, this professional competency examination was in the existence since the amendment of Engineers Act, Registration Engineers Act 2015. Okay, so as this presentation slides, I would like to contribute this to the amendment to this act, and also the introduction of this professional competency examination. I would like to share the slide that was being prepared by my beloved friends and I think the board members, and also he is the past president of the ISM, Arwah Engineer Dr. Majid. So he's the what we call it as one who really one of the personnel who have driven to have this professional competency to be executed in Malaysia. So before we proceed, I think if this tafakur, and then for the Muslims friends, we can hadiahkan Al-Fatihah untuk arwah, dan for 1 minute. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alamin. Ar-Rahmanir-Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdinas siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina ghairil maghdubi 'alaihim waladdallin. Okay. I think most of us, especially those having the professional engineers, okay, you have passed your PAE and then getting your professional engineers. Now you have to get another competency certificates in order for you to practice, ataupun kita kata if you want to become a consultant. Okay, so a lot of people, our fellow engineers is questioning why we have this another hurdles. Whereas before this, anybody who passed the PAE, then you might be able to open up your consultancy or become the submitting person. Okay, in my presentation today, I will bring back some history, why things happen, and for you all to appreciate, and then to see the importance of why we're having this kind of examination. It's not something that pleasant to the engineers, but it is a must. Because you have to remember what's the roles of board of engineers. The role of board engineers is about to look after the welfare, to look after the safety, to look after the health of the public. Means they are looking after the public. So we have to find way in order to execute this mission, or what we call the task or the responsibilities given to the board of engineers. Okay, competency examination. Okay, is there a need? Okay, this question has been asked by many ever since it been introduced or before it being introduced. Okay, just we go back a few, looking into the definition of competency. Okay, as being defined abstract from this paper by McGee. You might question who is the McGee. McGee, he's actually a medical doctor. He's a researcher, but we found that the definition given by him is quite comprehensive. So he says that professionals are individuals who use technical or specialized knowledge and skills in service of public welfare. The importance of evaluating the incompetence of professionals is to receive assurance that the services delivered by professional persons are effective and safe. So it's about the specialization knowledge and skills to service the public welfare. Okay, so to ensure that the service delivered is effective and safe, so a person must be evaluate their competence. You see, that's what's been defined by McGee, and then defined by this Dr. Epstein. This is another medical doctors defining and assessing for the professional competence. It says that professional competence is the habitual and judicious use of communication, knowledge, skills, clinical reasoning, emotions, values, and reflection in daily practice for the benefit of individuals and community being served. Competence builds on a foundation of basic clinical skills, scientific knowledge, and moral development. So maybe the definition is more for the medical, but it can be used and uh, as for what an engineer have to do. So the competency cover many other professions, not only for particular medical profession, and also others who are directly going to impact the life and the death of a person. So, and engineers, by virtue that if you are given the license, because a professional engineers, professional engineer certification or a PE is actually a license. Okay, so a license used to say is that it's a license to kill, because whatever you do as a is not going to be questioned persons, is it? So you're going to take the whole responsibilities and apa nama ni, kita kata the liabilities of what you have done. So if you do something wrong, okay, in whatever decision you made, you can cause the life of people. You see, so by virtue that's the importance of this licensing of this as a professional engineers, so we have to ensure that the person who given the license having all the competency required. Oh, sorry. Slide mixed up. Okay. What are the attributes of this competent professional? Prior REA Amendment 2015. So prior Amendment 2015, PE registration with the board allows the engineer to be the submitting person or qualified person under the Street and Drainage Act. So by virtue of that, is the engineer then a competent person engineer? And then with the PE registration, the engineer can set up an engineering consultancy practice registered with the board within 3 to 4 years. Means that after you become the registered as a graduate members, 3 or 4 years, you can sit for your PE and become the PE and has this PE sufficient general engineering experience. So how many professional engineers in the practice understand the concept of duty, care, due diligence to the public and clients? That is a question that we would like to address today. Does the previous works of professional engineers demonstrate adequate competence to handle the works under questions? Has the professional engineer's reputation of outstanding integrity and honesty? What is the professional engineer standing in the professions and his reputation with the clients? So this kind of question is regularly being asked when we talk about competency of professional engineers. So we look into the, I mean, if some of you remember in the early 2000s, there's a lot of failures in the building and construction industries. And then this is a high profile failures. And I would present some of the failures or disasters. Like in the December 2008, we have the Bukit Antara Bangsa hill slope collapse. Okay. And then we have this 2009, we have this Jaya supermarket collapse. This Jaya supermarket is supposed to be demolished, but during the demolitions process, it collapsed. 2009, this is another disaster. A newly built stadiums in Terengganu. We have the roof collapse. Luckily, there is no fatalities, but it caused quite substantial engineering disasters in these incidents. And then having all this, we have the statement from the public figures. Such as the minister at the time, Muhammad Datuk Saziman, gave a statement that after the collapse of the roof of Kuala Terengganu stadiums and Jaya supermarkets, he says the bangunan lama roboh, bangunan baru pun roboh, bangunan nak roboh pun roboh. So this something kita kata from somebody. Okay, of course, the Datuk Saziman is engineers by himself. To show that's how venerable our profession at that time. You see, the trust. And then Tan Sri Lee Lam Tai, in his statement in the press at that time, says that after many incidents of this construction industry, that it raised many questions concerning the professional conduct of the various parties involved in the constructions. And there must be a moral awakening in the building industries. So these engineering failures is avoidable, and it's not an act of God. This is man-made structures, and there must be ways of how to avoid this the incident to happen. Again, the public outrage is self-evidence on the cause of the collapse. Okay, a lot of cynicisms of the days during that time. And then the most working, the most kita katakan statement done in the Straits Times on the 1st June 2009 mentioned about the collapse of professionalism, and it quoted that we also lose a little more of the trust that we still have for the expert and ethics of architects and engineers. It is time for the professional associations and the statutory bodies to step up and act on their failure to carry out their duties with due care and diligence in accordance with the law and ethics that govern their professional. So at that time in 2009, there's we start to look into this how we want to make our professionalisms become respected, and we can be become a reliable punya professions. So at the time, the regulatory regimes, we have the law of nature, we have the Registration Act, Registration Engineers Act 1964 and 1967. So the long titles of this act is that the act to provide for the registration of engineers and sole proprietorship, partnership, and bodies corporate providing professional engineering services for the purpose connected with it. So what is the purpose of the professional engineering services? So in the interpretation of the Act, says that professional engineering services means engineering services and advice in connection with any feasibility studies, planning, surveys, design, construction, commissioning, operation, maintenance, and management of engineering works or projects, and including any other engineering services approved by the board. So basically, this Engineers Act ataupun the Registration of Engineers Act essentially is regulate engineers practicing in building and construction industries. That is the main aims of the Act. So looking into this, we look into what is the building industries. So this building industries is being governed by this Act, the Strict Drainage and Buildings Act 1974. So the Act is to amend the strict drainage and building in local authorities, areas in West Malaysia, and for the purpose of connectivity. So we have the similar laws exist in the Sabah and Sarawak. And then this strict drainage and buildings Act as part 1 interpretation. So what is meant by principal submitting persons is a qualified person who submit building plans to the local authority for approval in accordance with the Act or any other law or any bylaws made under and including any other qualified person who takes over the duties and responsibilities of or acts for the first mentioned qualified person. And then define pula the qualified person means that professional engineers, professional architect, professional engineers, or building draftsmen registered under any written law relating to the legislation thereof. Meaning in this part, they have to relate to the law that govern all these professionals. Means Architect Acts, the REA, and others acts that govern a professional person. So submitting person is being defined here. Submit plans other than building plans to the local authority or relevant statutory authorities in accordance with this Act or any bylaw made thereafter, and includes any other qualified persons who takes over the duties and responsibilities or acts for the first mentioned qualified persons. So under this Strict Drainage and Buildings Act, the principal submitting person, the submitting persons, and then we have the defined as a qualified person is the person who going to be responsible for whatever they do in the undertaking the job or projects regarding the buildings and the infrastructures. So at the time, any professional engineers registered with the board or are allowed to submit plans under the Strict Drainage and Building Acts. Such registration is necessary with the activities of engineers in building and construction industry, has the direct impact and are critical to the public safety and interest. As I mentioned in the earlier of this presentation, that's whatever a professional engineer is doing is not going to be questioned by anybody else. So you're going to take up the sole responsibilities of whatever you're doing. That's it. So the responsibility of the professional engineers, we have to remember that professional engineers have the to govern by so many laws, so many acts, such as the Civil Law Act, is about the duty of care to the public, Registration of Engineers Act, breach of this registration of ethics, you have to answer to the BEM, Strict and Drainage Building Act, breach of the regulation have to local authorities to who are going to govern you, who are going to look after you. And then we have the contract of law, fiduciary interest and duty care of the clients. So this is a contract between you and the clients. And then with all these laws, with all these contracts, with all these regulations put up, how many professional engineers really understand the concept, the responsibilities and the liabilities that they have to take up? So we look into the act itself. I mean, our paternity. How many engineers are registered? Actually, there many do, and also there many don't. Okay, so this is the latest statistic of registration. It's the Board of Engineers. You can see that's professional engineers with a practicing certificates. We have about 9,000 plus. Professional engineers, we have 5,000 plus. Accredited checkers for the structures, 14. Accredited checkers for geotech, 16. We have 150,000 plus radio engineers. We have about 16,000 plus industry engineering technologies and 7,000 plus of inspector of works. So we have also registered the consultancy companies. We have about 1,000 plus for the body corporate, 49 multidisciplinaries. We have about 200 plus for partnership. We have 1,000 plus for sole proprietors. So this is as what in the BEM website on the 4th of September this year. And for those who are new, you might question why we have so many professional engineers with practicing certificates. Okay, this is due to that when we have amendment to the 2015. Those who are the PE at the time are given the saving rights. Means they are being covered to become the PEPC automatically. They will be given about 1 year. 1 year to have these saving rights. And those who didn't convert their PE to the PEPC, they remain as a professional engineers. So of course, most of the PE at that time have take up these saving rights, and we have the figures there. And mind you that these figures is going to be reducing years after years. I mean, those engineers has retired and not having it's not more practice. They just relieve the PEPC and just revert back to the professional engineers. Okay, that's some about the statistic. But the things that we would like to look into the statistic, that's in terms of numbers of engineers. Okay, we have 91% of our registered engineers are graduate engineers, meaning that only 9% is a professional engineers. Out of 9% professional engineers, only 6% is professional engineers with practicing certificates. Okay. And then board registered engineers in every disciplines, every engineering disciplines. But when we look into this engineering professional engineers with practicing certificates, actually how many of them do become the submitting person? And then mind you, the engineering profession has the largest registered professionals. So we have about 9,000 something, 9,000 plus PEPC, professional engineers, only 22% who are within the ECP. I mean, that's who open up a consultant, in other words, who open up as consultants, a company. Meaning that out of the we have approximate 165 registered engineers, means all the graduate plus all the PEs. Approximately, we have 15,000 are professional engineers, approximately 9,000 plus as a PPC. And then many of the professional engineers, either they are professional with practicing cert or what, they are working in others areas, such as academia, research, production, industry, maintenance, and etc. etc. Because the engineering, as you can define as in the Act, the definition is very, very wide. You see, it's cover anything, almost everything about the engineering. And then estimated that there are about 2,000 to 3,000 EPC act as submitting or qualified person under the Building Act. So only a small amount of these engineers who are really become the submitting person, or we can see it as a qualified person under the Building Act. So prior amendment 2015, a professional, an engineer will take up the professional assessment examination, PAE, as what we have it now. And then assessment, this PAE allows everybody from the research, teaching, maintenance, production engineering to be qualified as a PE. And then when they have passed the PE, they can be registered as a professional engineers. And the board of engineers allow registration registration of engineers from teaching, maintenance, production engineering to become a qualified professional engineers. And then the substantial bodies of professional engineers exist who are not involved in the building industry, but are now allowed to submit plans under the Street Drainage and Building Acts. So some of these engineers, because being given a license as professional engineers without having a proper exposure in the buildings industries, now they are allowed to submit plans and become the qualified persons. So under this registration of Engineers Act requires declarations. So when you register with the board in the Form A as a graduate engineers, you have to sign this. I agreed to abide by the registration of Engineers Act 1990, including Code of Professional Conduct. And under Form B1, professional engineers, I'm a graduate engineers, have undergone the prescribed practical experience, and I have passed the PAE and have complied with all the requirements of the board. I agreed to abide to Registration of Engineers Act, Engineers Regulation 1990, including the Code of Professional Conduct. So in the Form E, engineering consulting practices, we have the submission of statutory body, and above two declaration of Form 1, Form A and Form B are almost equivalent to the statutory declaration as formed in the. So when we have signed this declaration, actually we have where is equivalent to the statutory body. If you're going to misconduct or you do something against the regulation, you can end up with a penalty. So directly, all the engineers has accept they have to abide to the specific code of conduct and ethics as what be stipulated under the regulations and circulars issued by the Board of Engineers. This is what means by the declaration, which everybody have signed it once you register with the board. Okay, so when you become the registered engineers, it's recognized in law as a professional and implied to responsibilities, obligation, and liabilities between parties to the agreement. Okay. Whether you have benefits, but at the same time you have obligation and liabilities. So once you are registered, or even when you have become a PE, you have all the benefit that the most benefit that you can practice as engineers. You can work, you can be employed, you can set up business if you are PE. But all these have to be come together with the obligation and liabilities. And also in the practice, you have all these declaration under the various other buildings law and the District Drainage Act when you doing the submissions. So we have this all the, we call it as a prakwan, where we have to sign it and make declarations. Okay. BM received a lot of complaints. Okay. The complaints basically is regarding the buildings and the construction industries. So the complaints are made to the BM from the members of public and individuals, from non-government organization, examples, the residents association, government organizations, private companies, house buyers, employers, and contractors, and also fellow engineers. And the most common type of complaints may be categorized as contractual cases where the lack of supervisions, violation of laws or acts, taking up the works of others without a letter of release. Negligent cases such as the design flaws and so on. So these are the complaints that have been being commonly received by the Board of Engineers. And then of late also there's a lot of from the publics or the clients says that the engineers not doing the due diligence. So as the publics and the clients are getting more what we call it as understandings of the law of their rights, the board have getting more and more complaints from the publics. So the responsibility and stakeholders in the construction industries. The type of failures that we face. The building failures of a public building involving structures or services. Building failures of other buildings, structures involving life and injuries of humans. Construction sites incidents involving human injuries or loss of life. Severe problems of building which create nuisance and interruptions to users of public buildings, internal pipe bursts, leak, etc. And the cause of failures by the stakeholders, 42% is from the contractors, 37% from the engineers, and the rest by developers, land office, supervisors, architects, and planners. So from this statistic, the failure due to the engineers are quite alarming. Okay, we are talking here is prior the amendment of 2015. So from these complaints, from this what the statistic we just look from what's the findings that we have to, the professional engineer must therefore understand that safety, health, welfare of the public is paramount. We have to understand the Registration of Engineers Act and regulation as a basic minimum. Okay, is fully proficient and aware of all local building acts and bylaws that govern the building construction industries. We have to be proficient in engineering practice, standards, code of practices, and procedures which he certified. Have to understand and is aware of the types and extent of technical standards which is applicable in the local engineering practice. An engineer must perform only in the area of competence. Skill considered, expert levels in yesteryears will become normal practice in present years, meaning that they have to always keep up their knowledge to the currents. And this requires engineer to have the CPD, okay, to stay current in their practice. Competency is a must to ensure proficiency in the above. So, as professional engineers, we cannot just we call it as to be satisfied with the knowledge, with what we have, with the knowledge and the skill that we have during the time that we are sitting for the PAE. You have to be improved from time to time and to know about the industries, to really proficient in the practice. So with that, we have to return back to the basic of professional engineer registration. So during that time, the following issues required reassess of the basic of professional engineers registrations. About the awareness of duty cares, self-regulation under certificates of completion and compliance under CCC, replacing the CFO, commitment to the liberalization of FTAs and the hazards to the public of substandard foreigns. So, means that the engineers, by virtue that you become the professional engineers, actually you are become self-regulated person. Okay, that's why the government have given the mandate or given the rights or given the power, empower to the engineers and the professional to issue the CCC. Okay, and then with that, we expect the professional engineers or the professional person to really understand their duties, their responsibilities, their liabilities, and they must really competence in doing their in their jobs. So furthermore, under this during that time in 2015, before that, our country have commit under WTO to liberalize the service sectors, meaning that we have to open up. We have to open up the business to foreigners to come in. So there must be a certain measures to be taken up to ensure that whoever coming to this industry in Malaysia must also having the same competency in terms of providing their services. So for the foreigners who coming to Malaysia to work as engineers, the law is going to be the same. Going to be the same as what be imposed to the locals. So If not, then you might get all sort of standards, engineers of all sort of standards from all over countries, all over the world coming to Malaysia is going to be haphazard. So we have to have really a very strong justification to put up certain measures so that whatever the practices given by the professionals, either it's local trainers, the standard must be to a certain level that we have agreed. So the professional competency exam to complement the professional assessment examination is necessary to address the issue of upholding the standard professionalism, minimum standard of proficiency of the competency and competency in the building, and to safeguard measures to protect public against substandards foreign engineering services provider due to the liberalizations. Amendment 2015 address the competency of the professional engineers. Okay. The professional engineer assessment, PCE, as you all have gone through, in the nutshell, the examination tests a candidate on what he knows. I mean, not what he does not know. I believe most of you is having this, gone through this PCE. Actually, whatever you submit is just a snapshot of your experience doing the engineering services. Either you are in the consultancy field, I mean, doing the design, or you are teaching, or you are doing the maintenance, production, whatever thing, but this is just a snapshot of what your experience. And the examiners will ask on what you know about the submission that been submitted. You are not big questions about something beyond that. So by virtue of that, you are professional, I mean, you are competent as what has been submitted during the assessment. But whereas under professional competency examination, the CE is an examination system that tests the professional engineers. Now, by virtue that you are professional engineers in your own rights, doing in your within your scope of works. Now, if you're going to enter into the building industries, become the submittee person, or become the qualified person as far as the Act under Building Street Apprentice Act is concerned, you must sit for this PCE, and this examination will test the candidate what he does not know and which he ought to know if he going to become enter into the industries, building industries, to design, or to design, to supervise, or to sign off of all the works, engineering works. So what to say for the professional competency examination, any professional engineers from whatever discipline, from whatever field they are doing now, they can take up. But once they have passed this PCE, we know that they have the knowledge of what is going to be a submitting person for the buildings or infrastructure works. That is the purpose of the PCE. So professional competency examination is a safeguard measures that is necessary to face the challenges of liberalization, as you mentioned before this, to ensure that local market can withstand any debilitating effect from the foreign markets. We want to protect the public against hazard of substandard foreign imports. Okay, so when we say the foreign engineers, we might think that all these foreign engineers is come from the developed countries. No, We have a lot of foreign engineers are come from the third world countries also. We have the foreign engineers come from the developing countries. And then they have come having all sort of standards, using all sort of standards. Okay, you can see from if you have been to other countries such as in the South Asia, like Vietnam or wherever, they are all engineers from all over the world is coming to that countries. They are using their whatever standards. Some using the British standards, some using the Russian standards, some using Japanese standards, Australian standards. So that's in terms of engineering standards they are doing, but also in terms of their competency also is not been really been sort of regulated. So we don't want to have that kind of peoples coming to this country and having all this bring their own levels of engineering standards. So we're going to have certain benchmark. So our benchmarking is that you have to pass the PCE, even the foreigners. Okay. So to ensure the local and national policies are not negatively affected, example, locals industry have sufficient safeguards. Okay. And to ensure that liberalization promotes growth to original intended. So all these safeguard measures by the developed countries are even more comprehensive compared to developing countries. You go to the US, you can enter into United States, but each of the states having their own laws and regulations, which might hinder any of you to practice over there. Same thing with other countries like Australia, even the UK, even in the European countries, they have all measures, safeguard measures, hidden behind whatever law they have to adopt. But in order for them to practice, they have to comply to certain regulations or acts. So for us here, we have to get this safeguard by having this PCE. Okay. So during that time, we have the framework for the professional competency exam to suit Malaysian requirements. Okay. This is what BEM punya previous registration practice. We applied to become to register with the board, having the qualified degree. As what now is you have to be accredited by the board or any Washington Accord equivalence. Having 4 years experience, you are able to sit for the PAE and become PE registered with the. And then weakness of this system is that engineers in all sectors are registered. It does not differentiate the building subsectors from any other engineering sectors. Engineers, whether it's teaching, research, industries, once registered as a PE, are allowed to submit plans under the Street Drainage and Buildings Act and the UBBL. They may not be sufficiently aware of their obligations. Even engineers in the building sectors may not be sufficiently benchmarked to the certain their proficiency in the issue of the building sectors. So the question arises, whether an engineer who are design drainage all his life is entitled for the PE civil, after which he can submit plans for the multi-story building. For this, is he competence? Although in the okay, when we are talking about submitting or practicing in the code of conduct, it mentioned that you cannot perform works beyond your expertise. Okay, beyond your expertise. As an example here, you have the doing all the drainage, or you become a whatever a water engineers, or you are become a you are the geotech engineers, or you um, but or roads engineers. But as what being registered there, you are civil engineers. By virtue you are civil engineers, you can sign anything. Any sub-discipline of civils, you can sign off and become the submitting person. So it is about self-regulating. You have to regulate yourself whether you are competent enough to sign off certain projects or certain jobs given to you. So as what in the conduct says, that you cannot perform beyond your expertise. Okay, so this is self-regulated. Nobody knows what is your expertise, what is the level of your expertise. You yourself know about this. You have to actually regulate yourself. If you are not competent to sign the structures of multi-story building, you're supposed not to sign it. But as what people see is that money talks louder. I mean, if you got paid certain things, people just close their eyes and just sign it and hoping nothing happens. So this is what happening, okay? Because people become so unethical and didn't follow what we are supposed to follow in terms of the code of conduct, doing something beyond their expertise. So by having this PCE, actually we enable at least to filter this in what we call it as a really competent person in that building sectors with those who are competent in other sectors. You see? So this model of a competency exam, Board of Engineers, is about we have the existing PAE retains as what we're having now. And then apart from that, they have to sit for the exam and then license to submit the plan. So now, under the amendment of the Act, the professional engineers, as been mentioned in the Street Drainage and Buildings Act, means instead just a PE, it must be a PE with practicing certificate. So existing professional engineering assessment examination PE registration to be retained. This will allow all categories of to be registered as a PE. Okay, this is first level. And then flexible allowed for the licensing or specific, because once this you have the PE, you are allowed to sit for other licensing in the specific sectors, such as Gas Supplies Act, under Electricity Supply Act. They have other competency certificate issued under this act. Okay, an example of electrical engineers, you see, or the gas engineers. So after they having the PE, they are allowed to sit for the competency interviews. Professional sitting for the exam and sitting for the interviews to become gas engineers. Same thing with the electrical engineers. We have to sit for the competency engineering exam for the electricity under the Electricity Act and sit for the professional engineer, and then you become the competence electrical engineers issued by the Engineering Supply Acts. Okay, and then under this, for this board have under the same model, board issue this certificate exam conduct certificate engineer for the building industry and issue a license, what we call now as a PCE, enable the person to do the submission under the strict Drainage and Building Act. So as we have in the other competency in other acts, such as the electricity supply regulation, the eligibility to become the competent electrical engineer, a person in order to consider eligible to sit for the examination of certificate of competency as a competent engineers, electrical engineers, shall satisfy the commission that comply the following conditions: that is Malaysian citizen, holding the degree, having the professional engineers registered with the Board of Engineers, not less than 5 years working experience, able to speak and write and speak the national language, able to comply with other conditions as the commission deems necessary. So the competency examination is not new in others sectors in Malaysia. And then as what in the Supply Act also, we have all the conditions to become the gas engineers, included that they must be a professional engineer registered with the board. So I think we can take a 5 minutes breaks for timing. I think I can pass back to the moderators.
Okay, we take about 5 minute break.
Okay, we have taken 1 minute. Okay.
Okay.
Kejap. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello, welcome back. So for the next half an hour, maybe we can look into the details of the professional examination, competency examination. Hopefully that's what I've been explained for nearly 1 hour. Just now have given you some of the insights of why we need to have this PCE to be implemented in Malaysia, especially during the time of after we have to liberalize the civil sectors, and also due to the incidents happens in the year 2000s plus. So professional competency examinations was held in 2016, right, 1 year after the amendment to the Acts. So BEM professional competency examination council, there are rules, because in order to have examination being conducted by the BEMs, so for this PCE, only BEM is being authorized to conduct the exam. It's not given or mandated to any other organizations. Okay, so BEM have formed what we call it as a competency examination councils, and their roles and function is as what's stipulated in the Engineers Act, says the function of the board shall be to appoint committee consisting of a person to be determined by the board to conduct the professional competency examination for the purpose of issuing a practicing certificate to the professional engineers. So introducing what the terms as what they call as a second tiers, actually is not really second tiers. This is totally different certification. Competence certifications given to whoever want to become a submitting person. This is under the professional engineers through the professional competence, the examination to be conducted by the BEM, who will then issue a license to practice certificates. So under the section 10, a qualification to be qualification for registrations, a person shall be entitled on application to be registered as professional engineers with practicing certificates if a person is a registered professional engineers, a person has passed professional competency examination conducted by the boards, and the person has complied with all requirements of the boards. means that to become a practicing, to have these practicing certificates, a person must be a registered professional engineers, because there is after we have implemented these practicing certificates, and there also these registered foreigners who have the foreign qualifications. They might have all the qualification, have a foreigner become the PE of other countries, and they want to sit for this PCE. Actually, they cannot. First, they have to qualify themselves to become the professional engineers. Through the routes of to become the PE, they have 3 routes actually. Now they sit for the PE or become the corporate members of IEMs. Another one is the equivalency of other foreign professional as what's as approved by the boards. So professional engineer who wish to set up a engineering consultancy practice ECP under the section 7A and 7B and supply professional engineering services must sit and pass the professional competency examination and register with the board as a professional engineers with a valid license, that is licensed practicing certificates. These sections allow BEM to issue a license of the practicing, license for practicing, license to practice. Okay, so how the organization of the council is to be in the setup of the board. So the board have to set up a professional competency council, and then also the composition of the board also being changed, that at least 50% members of the board must be a professional engineers with practicing certificates, because board comprised of presidents, they have a secretary and registrar. 40 members shall be professional engineers, 1 members of architect, 1 members of the from the board of QS. So this is a setup of board of engineers. We have all the standing committees doing, actually these are working committees, and also the council are doing the accreditations. Okay, the professional competency examination, by virtue of having this council of PCE, come directly under the board, and then this we have the stakeholders committee to review what are the things, then come up with the framework, and then council also to select a committee to come up with the question bank and also the syllabus. And then all the questions, the frameworks have to go through the panel of moderators to ensure that the questions that have been developed or being set up by the committee is of a certain standards. Okay, and the integrity of the competency examination is important. So those who sitting in the committee to set up the examination committee, I mean, they have to take the oath. They cannot be one of the things that they cannot be lecturing or open up what do you call it as any learning agencies, academics, just to provide what they call it as facilitation for the exam. So these people who are sitting in this committee should be really having the highly integrity and high integrity in terms of to safeguard the questions and to make the examination of really standards that can be trusted. Okay. So the aims of professional and competency examinations, this is about we consider to conclude what have been mentioned in the past hours. The professional competency examination will test the candidate within the limits of professional engineering services as defined by Engineers Act. Oh, sorry. In the various engineering discipline required for the construction industries. Okay, the keyword here is the construction industries. If you are not in the construction industries, you are not required to have this PCE. You see, you're not required to be. If you are in the production, let's say in the production industries, in the maintenance, or even you are lecturing in the universities, you don't require the PCE. Okay, so the PCE is required only for the construction industries. The examination will test the candidate knowledge, experience, and application of regulation, rules of engineering practice by BEM, statutory law, design codes, regulation, best practices, and standards of professionalism and ethical behavior imposed by the BEM. So to ensure this, we have the PCE. So PCE is an examination conducted by the Board of Engineers in accordance with the Section 4 of Amended Registration of Engineers Act 1967. The board appoints an examination committee consisting of such members amongst the registered professional engineers to assist the conduct. We have this professional competency examination council, as we mentioned just now. We have the stakeholders committee. We have the panel of moderators. Okay, this is this two entity is actually outside the committee. I mean, so this committee we set up what they call it as a common paper exam committee. We have the civil structure committee, mechanical paper committee, electrical paper committee. We have the marine paper. And then we have a few others, environmentals, and we have also now geotech. We have also now a few others as the demand grows. You see. So we have the secretariat for the examinations. And then summary of this examination system, the professional engineering, professional competency examination, we have two parts. Part A, common to all engineers discipline, and part B, specific to the each of engineering discipline. So part A, we have this common paper. One is objective questions, subjective questions. And then the part B is we have all the disciplines, the civil, mechanical, or electrical, or other engineering disciplines. We have paper 1 with objective questions. Paper 2 is subjective questions. And then, so now, since the requests by the industry, apart from the building and construction industry, other industry is asking also if they could have competent persons for their own purposes. So now we include the environmental, chemical, mining, and now they becomes more specialized. Let's say now we have a geotech also coming into the pictures. So by virtue of this demand by others industry, as far as a concerned, board board of engineer will try to we have to not try, they have to comply to the demand. Okay, eligibility to sit for the examination, there must be a PE, wishing to sit the professional competency, shall apply to the board of engineers by completion of whatever prescribed form they have. and they're paying the prescribed fees. Eligible candidate for the examination must be professional engineers registered with the Board of Engineers in appropriate disciplines. Okay. Candidates seeking registration as submitting engineers in the construction industries must have the relevant working experience in the field of engineering, which he wished to practice. And approval of the candidate application by the boards, the candidate is allowed to sit for the examinations. Okay, a lot of people asking also, last time, can they sit for the exam right after they get their PEE? They register as a PE. Yes, you can do that, provided you are prepared to sit for the exam, prepared to answer the questions. You see, if you are not being exposed to the construction industries per se, things might be very tough for you to, to answer most of the questions. You see, so then this one we can see from the result of the examination for the last few years. Okay. So general papers, this what they call it as the not general papers, general description of the PCE is comprised of two parts, as we mentioned before this. That we have the part A of common paper, consisting of two papers. Common paper is undertaken by all candidates, and all candidates, no matter what discipline you are, wish to be non-technical in nature, but will test on the candidate knowledge of law governing the profession, the responsibility of the professional toward the general public, and standards of professionalism and ethical behavior. Okay, there are two papers, part 1 and part 2. The candidate must pass both papers at one sitting. Okay, so if you fail one paper, to sit the next time for the both papers. Okay, so it's 1.5 hours in the paper each, so total is about 3 hours. And then part B is a paper specific for each discipline. Okay, you are civil, you sit for the civil papers, and then you are electrical papers, mechanical paper. If you are chemical papers, then so this paper also having the two, paper 1, paper 2, having the objective and subjective, a technical paper which will be on civil structures, mechanical, electrical engineering. Candidate will sit for paper in the 11 subject which they wish to practice. The examination will test the candidate competency within its respective field of practice. There are two papers for this part 1. For this part, there is part 1, part 2. They also have to pass the paper, both paper in one sitting. Okay. PCE comprised of two parts, part A. Okay, this is the regulation being put up for the examination. Compulsory to pass both paper part A in part A and also in part B. Candidate must pass both paper for part A and part B. If candidate pass part A but fail part B, he allowed to sit if he pass part A, but it also applied to part who post fail part B, but pass part B and fail part B, part A. So they can next time they can just take the parts that are failed. So the pass result for part A or part B is valid for 3 years. There is no limit to attempt to receipt for the other parts, as long as been done within the 3 years period. After 3 years period, the candidate has to receipt for both parts again. So you may take part A, and then maybe within that 3 years period, you may take part B. You can do that also. Okay, so you can plan in terms of what you are to suit your time and your ability. So the summary is that part A, we have all this common paper. Common paper is for part paper 1, paper 2 is about laws and regulation governing the engineering profession in Malaysia, engineers' responsibilities to societies, to the public, professionalism on the conceptual basis, ethical conduct and professional practice, overview of law having relevance, basic knowledge of contract laws being practiced locally with respect to the construction industries, and in-depth knowledge of the functions of the consulting engineers during the various stage of project implementation in accordance to the BEM models, form of agreement, management of engineering consultancy practices. So basically it's about what we non-technical paper. Is about laws, about the act, about the management of the ECP. And then we have the civil structures, survey and site investigation, earthwork, structure analysis and design, external water supply, survey, building, roads and highway design, drainage, design for building development, statutory practice, regulatory practice, and submission of procedures for civil engineers. Mechanical paper, we have air conditioning and ventilation system, fire protection, hydraulic, and other. And for electrical, we have the regulatory practice, electricity distribution system, system protections and discrimination, building system. So whatever yang the letters will be issued at the website BEM, so you can check the website on the what are the letters. Okay, the time allocated, then we can have this as we mentioned before, that's common paper. We have 1.5 hours, 40 questions. Passing mark is 50. Paper 2, 1.5 hours. You answer 3 out of 5. 50% passing mark. Civil structure also 1.5 hours, 40 questions. Passing mark 50. Paper 2, you are given 2 hours. Answer 3 out of 5. 50% passing mark. Mechanical paper, we have 1.5 hours. Paper 2 also 1.5 hours. 40 questions for objective. 3 out of 5. And all is within, I think, the 50% passing mark. Same thing with the electrical paper. Paper 1, paper 2, 1.5 hours each. So we have the subjective, objective and subjective questions. So basically the common paper, paper 1 and paper 2, we have in terms of weightage percentage, there is 40 multiple questions, and then we have 5 subjective questions. So regarding the Engineers Act and the professional engineering practice, we have the law regulation governing the engineering profession in Malaysia, engineering responsibility societies to public, professionalism on the conceptual basis, ethical conduct, professional engineering, REA, regulation, circulars, etc. They contribute about 35%. 35% of the questions. And then that involve the common law, local act, local authorities, overview relevance law, UBBL, SBO, CC means this one for the Peninsular Malaysia and also for the Sabah and Sarawak. This include. They contribute about 30%. The construction law is basic knowledge of contract laws, practice local with respect to the construction industry, CIPA, the CIDB, etc. contribute 25%. Engineering consulting practice, business and management. as in the depth knowledge of the construction of the consulting engineering during various stages of project implementation, have to get to understand the model form of agreement, skill office, management of GCP, Companies Act, EPF, SOCSOS, etc. So this one contribute another 10%. The question might comprise combination of some and all above. You see, so on the safe side, you have to get to know all the things that have been mentioned above. Okay. So these are the common papers for all the engineers in the construction industries. So for today, I'm going to just look into the common papers, because for other discipline, for civil, mechanical, and electrical, we have subsequent weeks, we have another speakers that are going to be they're going to talk specifically on the technical papers. Okay, and these are example of the questions. The questions been issued to the candidates. Example, like question 1, the local consultant A enter into agreement with a foreign contractors B to carry out the engineering consultancy services for the turnkey contract in the country. Midway through the project, war break out in the country. What's the effect? So they have A, the contract is valid and enforceable. The contract is frustrated. The contract is suspended. The contract is discharged. The contract is void. So it's a multiple choice. So if you've been with the involved with the contract, I think this question you can answer within the half a second. I mean, just a few seconds, you see. But if you are not familiar with the contracts, the question looks quite tough, you see. So that's why I say that a person must be exposed to the practice, at least to get the familiarity, the understanding of what they are practicing in the construction industries. Then it's going to be easy. If not, things might be a little bit difficult, and it's a little bit challenging to do. And then this another question is, which statement is right, is true? Only mechanical professional engineers can submit active fire protection plan. Civil or mechanical professional engineers can submit passive fire protection plan to industry. Professional engineers of any discipline can submit fire protection plan. Only electrical engineers. Sorry. So this kind of question is, I mean, to those young involved with the construction, I think shouldn't be any problem to answer this kind of question. But as I say, those who are not exposed might have some problem. Okay, same things is about this question, the BEM scale fee is mandatory, and whether this statement is false, true or false. It's false. Sole proprietorship practicing as the ECP must be registered with BEM. All ECP must be registered with BEM. Professional fees based on the man months do not contravene to the BEM scale of fees. For private projects, consultants may exclude provision of supervision and hence need not charge the corresponding professional fees. So this another question. This regarding the practice of the consulting engineers, okay, and then it's about the law, the regulation has been imposed by Board of Engineers as stipulated in the Act and the regulations. So this is test about the contract law and also about this REA. The contractors apply to EOT before his contract completion period expired. The contract administrator does not respond and the original contract completion date is passed. 1 month later, the contract administrator issue a VO for additional works to the contractors. The contractor refused to carry out the VO works. What can a contract administrator do in these situations? So if you familiar with site administration or contract administrations, because when the contracts between the contractors and the clients sign prior they enter to the sites, you see. So if you quite familiar with the site administration ataupun project managing the sites, so this question is, or the issue is quite common. Okay, the issue is quite common. Even if you are not, you are in the, let's say, in the consultant office, head office, doing the design and not familiar with this, you might have, this question might be quite a challenge to you also. So that's why a person must be familiar throughout the whole cycles of project in order for them to really understood what's the contributes in terms of managing, in terms of designing, or in terms of the requirement for you to undertake a construction projects or construction jobs. So is to me, if a person says that you after taking the PCE and then let's say you are in the production industry ataupun you are in terms of service providers industries and you want to take up this, you may take up. Nobody going to, I mean, menghalang ataupun to say no to you, but the things that is going to be a very challenging, because I used to have a person who come from ONG, okay, oil and gas industries, and they say that he working in the industries for 20 odd years, and then dia kata why he have to sit up for this PCE, and then anyway he take up the PCE, and then of course he couldn't get through because of the question being asked is not something is familiar in their industries, you see. So due to that, they have to be exposed. Even if you sit in the classroom, let's say somebody want to conduct a course or even form a, they can do it, but of course it's not going to cover throughout what is required in the industries. Usually I did mention to those who wish to take up the be in the industries, take the experience, understand the industries, and then make sure you have all the knowledge required, then take up the exam. Because those who have done that, they have found that it's not too difficult. Okay, a consultant has carried out, this is another question. It's about the contract laws also. The consultant has carried out substantial works on the project and employers encounter financial difficulties, has suspend the project on resumptions. He terminates the consultant employment, citing use in the house consultant to complete the works due to financial constraint. What is the legal effect on the termination? And what financial compensation can the consultant seek? So this is something not common, but is happening in the industries, you see. So, but if you read through the regulation and then also the Engineers Act, they have some clue on this question, because this is some essay questions. Essay questions mean that you can elaborate, you can, and then a good thing about this exam that you is open book questions, open book exam. Okay, I just look a little bit on this multiple choice. I mean about other papers. Okay, the technical papers, but anyway, the detail of this going to be go through by our speakers in the following weeks. So same thing with the civil structures. We have the weightage here. Geotech, civil infrastructure, they have all the percentage, weightage percentage here. And the same thing with the mechanical paper, air conditioning, firefighting, hydraulic. We have all this weightage. Same thing for electrical, regulatory practice, system, power system, system protection, building systems. They have all the weightages. Okay, since 2018, PCE examination available for the following disciplines. We have civil, mechanical, electrical, chemical, environmental, mining, and geotech. So we have in 2019, 2020, we don't have exam due to the COVID. And then this year we're going, we're going to having the exam somewhere in November. So traditionally, I think 2016 we have all the exam in December, and the venue as far as in Peninsular Malaysia, we have it in the Dewan Peperiksaan di Simlaya. Okay, so maybe I will bring you some of the PCE examination result. So this examination being conducted since 2016, 2018. These are the numbers of candidates. You can see the civil numbers of candidates increasing from year to year. Okay, 2007, and then in the first 2017, we have the first candidate for the environmental and chemical. 2018, we have the geotech, mining, and chemical. So the additional discipline they put up here, this based on the demands. Okay, they have to let's say from whatever discipline you have to send to the board and justify that why the examination for this particular discipline is required. So the board have to prepare for the question. Okay. So this 2016, when the board first time organized this PCE, only 6 candidates passed both common papers and the technical paper. Of course, there is other. I just bring in the result for those who are passed both papers. Means that the person who passed the PCE. Okay, so breakdown is that civil having 3, mechanical 3 candidates, electrical having 2 candidates. In 2017, candidate passed both papers. Who passed both papers? Only 34 numbers. It contribute to 19%. Breakdown of the past exam. Candidate civil 19, mechanical 7, electrical 7, chemical 1. In 2018, we have 22 candidate pass both paper. 8 from civil, 7 from mechanical, 7 from electrical. I don't have the result for 2019. Sorry for that. So this is picture of the examination hall. Okay, we had no handphones, no computers. We having given you the candidates 2 tables because it's an open book examination where you can bring your books. You can see that some of the candidates bring their luggage bag full of books. I don't know whether they can have the time and able to open up the books to to seek for the reference. So there is the environment during the breaks of the exam. This is in the exam hall. This is an exam hall of the University Malaya, Dewan Peperiksaan. So that's about all about this PCE, which I can share with you. Okay, since I've been involved with this, I've been the registrar of the board for 11 years, and then gone through this process of amendment of the acts. I've gone through with Arwah Dr. Majid and the team for the stakeholders engagement before prior we amend the act, and also during the time that we try to convince the government, the parliament, to ensure that we get the amended act to be gazetted. So there's a very challenging years during that time. And of course, whenever you introduce something new, there's always a lot of, we'll call it as people who are against it for whatever reasons. But what been done is that for the purpose to safeguard the publics, to ensure that the public have the right people to do the job for them, especially when we are talking about the construction industries. So maybe I can just open up the Q&A session. If there is any, then please write at the chat. Maybe I can look into the maybe I can answer whatever things. If I couldn't answer this during this session, maybe we can have a written. We can write to to those who asking the question. Okay. There's a question here by Daniel P. Is it mandatory for clients to have in-house PE holders in order for government to endorse drawings submitted by the consultant extra for housing development? Okay, this you are talking about the government. You are talking about the government, whether the government department must have the PE. Okay, now endorsement of the drawings. When a consultant submit a drawings or submit the design, that consultant is going to be responsible and liable, fully responsible for the design there. And then this the government department, maybe talking about the local authority, they just endorse it. Okay, they just endorse it. When they endorse, saying that you have complied in terms of whatever required administratively, they are not going to take up the liability. They are not going to take up the responsibility of the consultants. They just endorse to ensure that all the process, the procedures, what they call it as the administrative issues are being carried out. So in that case, they don't need to have the PE. They don't need to have the engineers also, because they're not supposed to scrutinize your design. They're not supposed to scrutinize your calculation or everything. They are just looking in terms of administrative issues. You see? So the whole design, the whole drawing is belong to the consultant, do not belong to that submitting person, and that submitting person is going to be fully responsible and liable to their design. Okay. Is it open book? Yes, it is open book. We have this question: the engineers who obtain their PE after 2015, they have to go for another test in order to confirm their competency. On the other hand, PE before 2050 obtain their automatic qualification to PPC. how are you sure they are competent enough as they never been tested? Bear in mind that all past incidents, like the collapse of mall growth, etc., is designed by the PE. Yes, you are right there. That's why we cannot ensure whether they are really competent as what been tested. Those are being tested after 2015. But it's the law. The law is that these people who are having their PE prior to 2015, they have the right to become submitting person. And I have explained in the slide, at least early slide, that says that this is the flaws, I mean the weakness of the system during those days. But the law says you cannot take the right of a person. Okay, we cannot take the right of the person prior given them the chance. So that's why we have what they call the period, about 1 year period. That we call it as a saving right. Saving right is given to the person who having the right before this. When we do an amendment to the act, saying that we cannot just taken out their rights. If we just taken out their right before giving them any chance, then is illegal. It's not legal, and according to the law of these countries and the law of other countries, also the same thing. Whenever you change or you upgrade whatever you amend to the certain act, you cannot just take up the right of the person before this. So we hope that by the time these people are going to face out. You see, most of the people is a very senior people, and then most of them have resigned from the industries, and then finally it's going to take time where we're going to have most of the people in the players in this the construction industry is the people who have really sit for the PCE. But anyway, actually mentioned earlier is that the act, the Engineers Act under the Code of Ethics have clearly mentioned that, meaning that you cannot do something beyond your expertise. If you are not expert on certain thing, you don't go into that field. You just sign off on something that you really competent. You see, because board used to have cases where a person who practice in the beyond their expertise, and then the penalty is very severe. Okay, the engineers has been deregistered. If you perform something beyond your expertise, although let's say you are civil engineers, and then you are having all this competency in terms of water, let's say, okay, or throughout the years, 30 years, you are doing water engineering, and finally somebody come up to you to sign a structure, and then you not say that you don't know about structures, but the thing is that you are not exposed, you are not to the level of what we call it as expert, and then you just sign up. Something happened to the structures, okay, and then if you've been caught saying that you are not competent or expert in doing that, then you might be penalized under the by the disciplinary committees. Okay, so hopefully that the industry is getting better and better, so that we can live in the safe environment. Okay. Okay, the one of the parties. Okay, sorry. What is this? In my opinion, engineers who obtain their PE after 2015 and pass will be better generation. Yes, that is what we plan, and we hope that we have a better, safe apa nama ni, kita katakan environment. Okay. And then is the PE held in KL or does be organized in Sabah and Sarawak? Yes, I think BEM is looking into this and then going to have to organize also the PCE in Sabah and Sarawak. I'm not sure, but we can check with the board. Maybe this year they're going to have it. For the specific paper, do you test engineers from Sabah and Sarawak building ordinance? Yes, I think they have the paper. They have the question for that. Actually, from engineer from Sabah and Sarawak, they should have also learned about the UBBL, and because those people in the Sabah and Sarawak also might come and operate in Peninsula in Peninsula Malaysia, see, and the same people, from Peninsula also can practice in Sabah and Sarawak. Of course, they have to get the work permit in accordance to the immigration punya law. See, is it not correct to question the competence of engineers qualified as a PE before 2050? Every PE, PEPC is guided by the REA. It is up to each individual to practice within the given guidance. Yeah, of course, they should have, practice within all the guidelines. But you can see some of the people just simply, just break the law lah, put it that way. They didn't follow the code of practice. That's why we have all these complaints. And then with all this, we bring to the disciplinary committees. People be penalized. You see, under this Engineers Act, when you bring to the committees, disciplinary committees, the committees can penalize you, having within the 4 penalties, either you're going to have the reprimand, whether you are going to be fined not more than 50,000, and you may be being suspended not more than 2 years, or the most severe is that you might be deregistered. So with all this, actually, the PE should have, as I mentioned many times in my presentation, that's the PE, the engineers must do their self-regulating. They have to self-regulate themselves. You see, that's why I'm always saying that this is a very honorable profession. You don't need some enforcement officer to come over to your office, to come to your house and check on you, and because you are this is supposed to be an honorable profession. You must uphold your conduct. You must uphold your ethics, your professionalism, and be somebody respectable. Okay, and then I'm out of 1,000, 2,000 over registered engineers. There's only a few, the bad hats that we can say that in the industry. But these bad hats have really spoiled the names, the reputation of the engineers. So we have to look into these people, and then if you have this kind of people within your communities, within your you can just complain to the board, and the board we do some investigation on this, because as you can see, the majority of the engineers, they are good engineers. Okay, I would say that, because we have thousands, okay, hundreds of thousands projects being designed, built by the engineers, and then just only a few that we have all these disasters, and this few is being conducted by a few, a really very few. So we have to uphold our reputations, as a professions, respectable reputation professions in the eye of the public. You see, there is a question also. Can we have the sample of question? Sample of how to answer the questions in a point form or in the long essays. I think you are the engineers. Okay, you have sit for more difficult questions in the examinations. I think you have to learn. There is a lot of way to learn on how to answer the questions. You see, then to be an engineers, of course, you must be kita katakan what we call it as versatile. And engineers not only talking about facts and figures, they have to also looking into as understanding the peoples. You are managing peoples, you are dealing with peoples. And the question is when talking about this, the general purpose is about the peoples. You see, the act, the regulation is about the peoples, and then the understanding that you have to brush up, to have more readings, to kita katakan apa? Kita kata to learn about the more on the social punya ni lah. And with respect to the concern raised by the earlier participant on the saving rights of PPC before 2015, any reason why the PCE examination cannot be implemented to those PEPC who got waived from the exam? I'm not saying that we should take up the rights to practice, but this will make them aware if they are deficient in any aspect. Yes, we cannot force them, but if they want to take the exam, by all means, they can do it, you see. But as I can say that most of those people yang having the PE or even the PEPC now, you can see from the statistic that I have put up, only 3% is actually doing the involved in the construction industry as or involved with as a submitting person. And those with a submitting person, and those yang kita katakan yang being given the saving right, they have been in the industries for so many years. And I think if they sit for the exam, maybe it's not difficult for them to pass. But as we can see that it's always about self-regulating. If they say they are not fit to do, then by all means they should have stepped up from doing the works they are doing now. And if they think they are capable and can give the service and practicing in accordance to their expertise, then I think we have to trust them, and then hopefully that is true. You see, to reply to the question on how to answer the question, understanding and wisdom, yes, but the time given is only okay. I think we have to I don't know, maybe we in terms of exam ni kita I don't know, maybe some organization macam Mega Jati ASEM want to have to conduct some process, you by all means that you can have that. With all the sampling, you can set up your own maybe the courses, the required courses. Nothing to stop you. Nothing to stop any organization, any academy, any to have the courses to facilitate the candidate. And maybe one of the whoever would like to take the opportunity to do that. I don't know, because there is no law that says that you cannot. the only I mean, what we call it as not severe barriers, but exemptions for those who set up the questions. Those who are set up question, who sit in a committee to set up a question, is not allowed to conduct any courses, to conduct any festival. But those who are not, then since we have a lot of these experienced consultants around, then maybe we can have classes or courses that's to pulang lah. I mean, to facilitate the new how to answer to the question dan sebagainya. Yeah, 2 to 3 hours. Yeah, there's an opinion. Maybe somebody can. So I think we have passed the time. 2 hours. Okay. I see there's any other question. This one. Okay, tak ada lah. So I think I pass back to the moderators. Anyway, I would like to say thanks for giving me the opportunity to give whatever my opinion, and then to clarify on certain things which the new generation might not have opportunity to listen the reason behind why we have all this PCE. And hopefully that those who like to take up this PCE will prepare themselves. Okay, as some of my colleagues say, it might take you 1, 2 or 3 years in practicing after your PE. Then you might be comfortable sitting for the exam, and then you might pass the exam with one sitting. And no hurry, but it's better for you to be well prepared rather than just to take up the exam and hoping to pass it by chance. And it's better to design to win the things, to win the battle by design rather by chance. Okay, then sebagai kata akhir lah, saya kira ada tersilap tersalah dalam saya punya presentation just now. I'm sorry, apa ni? I apologize for that. Saya minta maaf. Mungkin cara saya presentation tak berapa lancar lah. I've been retired for nearly 1 year, and then they don't been on the stage and be talking about this quite for some time. Is some hiccup here and there lah. So for that, saya kira ada tersilap dan salah, saya minta maaf. And then for further punya information, you may contact the BEM for. So for that, I pass it back to moderators. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you.
Okay, we have come to the end part of our presentation. Thank you, Engineer Hizamuddin, for a great presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us today. And thank you everyone for active participation for today's session. We hope you learn and enjoy from today's presentation. For a soft reminder, once you leave today's webinar, you will receive thank you email attached with the webinar feedback form. We will appreciate if you complete that and provide your feedback. We hope to see you again on the next webinar session. Stay safe everyone, take care, and Assalamualaikum.
Terima kasih Engineer Zam.
Okay, terima kasih.
Thank you. Terima kasih. InsyaAllah.
Okay, sama.
For next session kita ada lagi tiga speaker, civil, mechanical dengan electrical. For those who are actually coming from that discipline, who are planning to get this PCE, the session will be carried out by our past candidate. Civil and mechanical, we managed to get 2 candidates from the previous PCE and did pass the examination. So they might come and share the session for all of you lah. And one more is Engineer Chong Chu Fan, is a council member of SM and as well as a someone who are related to the framework of the examination assessment. So he might also be taking on the framework on electrical. But we got 3 more topics to go for this month under this team, which is PCE, and we very thankful to our engineer Izamuddin bin Rahman, who will become the session opener for this coming webinar. Thank you, Engineer Izam. And hopefully we can see, we can meet again all our participants coming from all other backgrounds to have the session. Even though the session is for civil, mechanical, electrical, but they will also touch on the common subjects or common paper. I think it's very helpful if you can also participate in that. With that note, I'm on behalf of the consulting, on behalf of the Megayati, thank everyone to join our session today, and hopefully to see you again in next week. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jeniza.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Bye.